People that have woken up in bed with a stranger. What's your story? When I was 11 I went to my friend's place for a horror movie sleepover night. I woke up with a 4-year-old boy who turned out to be her little brother, clinging to all my blankets in fear. He had eavesdropped on our sleepover after pretending to go to bed early, and was now convinced a killer doll would murder him in his sleep. Their mom made us all hot chocolate and then he slept in her bed all night. I was taking a train from Munich to Venice. It was one of those trains that the little rooms have chairs that pull out into beds. A older Italian gentleman came in the room and as the train took off he made the sleep hand gesture. So I crashed out with this old dude. I woke up to him tapping me letting me know we will be in Venice after the next stop. I was around 19 years old and at a weekend festival where most people camped out in tents. I got hammered and blacked out on Saturday and woke up on an air mattress in somebody else's tent. I sat up to get my bearings at some point in the morning and a couple was also in the tent, but not laying on the air mattress. The guy sat up right after me and said, "Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you better get the F out of here." I didn't stick around to ask any questions. Not really woke up with a stranger, but I did wake up on a stranger's couch once. Looked around and sat up to see a woman staring at me. I was startled and realized I had no idea who this woman was. Then realized I was only in my underwear, so I half covered up and she asked who I was. I said my name and asked where Jill was, the girl I thought I went to see. She looked confused for a second before bursting out laughing. Turns out Jill's neighbor didn't lock her door and I was obviously very drunk. I ended up making a sandwich and drinking half a carton of orange juice before hitting the couch. Thank God she was so nice. Skylar, if you're reading this, thank you for not calling the cops. Haha. I woke up to the sound of rain hitting the tent I was in, not my tent, and the random guy next to me saying OF, my unicycle. One time at my cousin's house party I was absolutely out of social energy and went to a room to go to sleep and I woke up in the middle of the night with two of the most jacked dudes I've ever seen curled up together next to me and a unit of a bulldog sleeping in between me and the dudes. One of the guys saw me wake up and he asked if it was cool to sleep there and I said that I didn't mind but he should let me have some of the blanket because it was freezing. He said no problem bro and then tucked me in like some mother hen and then said good night bro. Which was the most strange wholesome thing I've ever experienced. Not me but a neighbor was a member of a fraternity and they all went downtown and got completely wasted. He doesn't remember how he got separated from his buddies but woke up in a very soft bed not knowing where he was. He saw a large fluffy flowered bathrobe on the back of the door and put it on. He heard some voices and walked towards them. He walked into the dining room and there was an all-black family smiling in relief at him. My neighbor was a southern white guy. They were all eating breakfast and the father pulled out a chair right beside him and made him a heaping plate of scrambled eggs, grits, toast and bacon. My neighbor had left the bar in a drunken state and had come upon their car and passed out in their backseat. Thankfully, all ended up okay. He kept in touch with that family for a long time afterwards. Away at college. Went to a bar, met a girl. I woke up the next morning in an on-campus apartment sharing a recliner with said girl. Neither of us lived on campus or knew who lived in the apartment we ended up at. I know a guy who went home with a stranger, went pee in the middle of the night naked, went back to bed, woke up to screaming. He had gone back to the wrong room and was naked in her mother's bed. I woke up with an eye patch on. It was the 1st of November and I managed to pick up a cute woman who dressed up as a pirate. I was so blackout. I charmed myself into being with someone way out of my league. She would later tell me I couldn't get it up, making her regret her decision. Alcohol gives, alcohol takes away. Probably not what you imagined. As a kid, I would sleepwalk at night. In the morning, I would have no recollection of what happened. I spent the night at a friend's house when I was about 10, and the family had a fire going in the fireplace in their living room. My friend's mom decided to sleep on the couch to make sure the fire went out, and the dad went to sleep in the parents' bedroom, due to the door to their bedroom always being closed. I had never been inside, which was very disorienting the next morning when I awoke in said bedroom, as the dad was just waking up and getting out of his bed. He had assumed during the night I was his son, and didn't question anything when I slipped into bed with him. Kudos to dad for not making it any more awkward than it already was. And that's the story of how I awoke next to my friend's dad. Not as raunchy as some of the stories, but a friend of mine in college woke up in some random girl's bed that she didn't know. She was so drunk that she thought it was her dorm room, and the door was open, so she got in the bed and slept. When she woke up there was a note next to her that said something like, "Hey, I don't know who you are, but you were really asleep last night. Don't worry, it's cool if you crash here. I was going to spend the night at my boyfriend's. Just please make sure you close the door when you leave. P.S. I left you a glass of water on the nightstand." Apparently that girl came back to her room and found my friend passed out on her bed. She decided to be really nice and let her sleep it off. Got really drunk in Vegas. Some girl with her friends insisted on going up to my room. I kept telling her she didn't have to, but she kept saying let's go. Let's go. We kissed twice. Then she immediately passed out in my bed, so I did the same. With all of our clothes on. I woke up a few hours later, still in a half-drunk state, having completely forgotten about her. Looked over and my brain was like, WTF? Where am I? I quickly remembered and went back to sleep. Woke up a few hours later and she was gone. The stranger wasn't in my bed. He was standing beside it looking down at me. He had not been in my apartment when I went to bed. He had broken in and apparently spent quite a bit of time in there before entering my bedroom. He'd broken in through one door and created an exit for himself that took him past the door he'd entered through and out through our other, almost never used, door. I chased him out but lost him in the alley behind my building. The police believed that my reaction saved me from an assault and possibly from abduction. Unfortunately they never caught the guy. While still living at my parents' house, woke up after a club night. It was still a bit dark, but I saw someone next to me in my bed. Spent 15 minutes trying to figure who this was before I decided to take a look. Turns out it were my extra blankets I used to fill up the space between bed and wall. Decided I needed a lot more sleep before going out of bed. Woke up, didn't remember his name, pretend to ask for his messenger so that I could get his name again. Next month will be our 4th anniversary. Lol, oh god. Wish this hasn't happened as often as it has. As a tiny female, I'm lucky to be alive. One specifically stands out. I was out drinking with my dad. He was in town visiting uncle and my brothers. Across from our table are these two guys visiting from Tennessee. At some point my uncle starts chatting with them and invites them to join our table. One is very Matthew McConaughey like, so naturally I'm trying to be subtlety flirtatious. I drank a lot that night, to the point that I'm pretty spotty on leaving the bar, or even the fact that my family just let me leave with these two random guys. I woke up in their hotel room. Turns out it was 7 guys sharing the room, and I had the entire bed to myself. They even put the comforter over me while a couple had the other bed and the rest slept on the floor. One of the dudes even went and got breakfast for us all, including me. They tried to convince me to go to the Fish concert that they were in town for, but I had to work. Not a bed but kind of an abandoned trailer in the middle of the desert. Found shelter, slept in it, woke up there was another person in there. They didn't know I was in there either. When I stood up and looked around they were staring at me all wide-eyed and clearly freaked out. I didn't know what to do and we just looked at each other for a little bit. I don't know what to say so I offered her some corn nuts. We both laughed at that and then we shortly left without asking any questions. That's the closest I ever got to a one night stand. How about the opposite? I was out drinking with this girl and her friends I had just met. Ended up going back to their hotel room and hooking up. Fell asleep around 3 AM. Woke up around 5 AM with a bad hangover and completely alone. Somewhere between 3 and 5 the girl and her friends packed their shit and checked out of the hotel while I was asleep. Not woke up with one but came home from primary school around 11 years of age to find a complete stranger in my bed. Being completely naive thinking he was a family friend, I made us both sandwiches to give to him. I returned to my room to find him gone. I now look back at this with complete horror. My family finds it amusing that it took me years to tell my family about it. Well, I did, but not in the way that you'd think. So basically I went to sleep in my friend's bed because he got on the sofa and I woke up with a girl next to me. We didn't do anything the night before because multiple people have reported that they saw her coming into the room and just laying down next to me telling them that I was her boyfriend, which I wasn't, and then going to sleep. She may have confused me for her boyfriend, and when I woke up I just snuck out and went home. Not exactly the answer to the question, but my dad told me something scary after his stroke. Because he couldn't feel one side of his body, he would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and think a stranger had broken in and was laying next to him. He would have to calm down and remember that he'd had a major stroke and didn't immediately realize that the person he thought was laying next to him was he himself. LMAO, this has happened to me multiple times because I black out really easy, but the crazier of times goes like this. I was 21 and had just got into a fight with my GF in front of her whole family at their Christmas party. We were both drunk and we broke up for the fourth and final time that week. I stormed out without my house keys or wallet or phone. I had drank an entire handle to myself at that point. Walked to the local bar about 2 miles away and realized I didn't have any money, but I did remember my cigarettes, which I used to trade for more shots. Next morning I was naked in bed with a couple twice my age over 40 miles away from my apartment. They said nothing happened. You just cried a lot and said you didn't have a place to go, so we took you in and cuddled. The boyfriend drove me to work and I moved out of state the next week. Got really drunk at a dorm party. Ended up carrying a passed out girl up to her room 3 flights of stairs. Elevator was out. Clunked her in her bed. Took her shoes off. Then passed out on her floor. She woke me up by stepping on me and yelling at me. I was too hungover to argue and just left. In a dorm room. Early September. Roommate came home and didn't lock the door. Person who lived in the room the last year came in and climbed into what was now my bed and passed out. I woke up. Hilarity ensued. We became great friends.